So I talked to a guy yesterday. It wasn't a recorded conversation. He's a Christian Reformed minister who has been trying to do online church. And he was very curious. A colleague of mine and a friend of mine from college and seminary said, "Oh, you should talk to Paul Vanderklay." So we had this conversation, it was offline, and he basically asked me, how the whole story. So I just gave him the whole story. I've told it many times. And then he says to me, "So it sounds like you didn't have a plan, that you sort of stumbled into this and that you just sort of felt your way around." I said, "Yeah, exactly. The one thing I cared about was I wanted to sort of break down the wall between the church and the outside world so people could have better conversations. That's the one thing I really cared about, and hence estuary. But what we've sort of stumbled upon in this internet space with the Randos conversations and the now the live streaming and these parasocial relationships that we're having, do you think that the reason that we are deriving a sense of satisfaction or pleasure or freedom from it is because it is in some ways anti-nudge, because there is a degree of randomness to this, maybe?"
Yeah, I wouldn't say randomness plays a role, but what I really believe is that it works because it is organic. It follows that model. So um, personally, when I speak with digital marketeers, I always attack them. I go to them like, you take all this money from your clients and you offer back a minimal value. Like you deliver all these ads to random people and there is no interaction. You are doing all of that just to spend the budget because you have a big company, let's say, as a client, and you want to deplete the budget on time in order to get the next, let's say, a bundle of budget coming in. If they instead focused on the organic growth model, that's beautiful because it means that something it doesn't need to get nudged or pushed, let's say, down our throat or via the fire hose or whatever. So, so yeah, and maybe there is also something about this. How Grimm, the general, calls it micro celebrities of TLC. So, okay, you have this notion, right? This is a first. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So you have these people that different subgroups, let's say, within the fellowship, they feel more akin to. So we have these small islands, let's say, within TLC in terms of content creators, and we can call them micro celebrities because they function like that. Another term, borrowing once again a term from mimetics, will be the attractors. So it's not like um, those micro celebrities, they only come once every, I don't know, blue moon. For example, in your case, you are the largest of everyone here, okay? And you go and visit the small live streams, the live streams on the small channels. This is it's not happening. And I'm going all the way back to those figures of merit. There is no way Jordan Peterson will just jump in a live stream. That will never happen. So yeah, I really love that about you because you are. I know you don't like to call yourself like the leader or whatever, but if I had to choose one style of leadership for you, will be this natural one. Like you just follow your heart and you do it. You don't listen to what the you don't get boggled down by the pressures, let's say, of the market. So,
Yeah. Well, and it's strange because on one hand, I can afford to do that because I don't have a big operation. So a bunch of people, Tim Pool did a live stream about his Tim Pool in real life live stream last week or the week before, where he said, "Oh, this might be the last one." And so, because on that one, a bunch of people sent me this. I don't usually watch Tim Pool, but he was talking about how, basically has the growth has to be managed so that it doesn't destroy you.
Yeah.
But the management of that growth has costs to it. And so one of the ways to limit those costs is to limit not growth itself necessarily, but the pace of growth. Because it's so often, again, everything that I've done on this, I've learned sort of watching churches. When I've seen churches grow from 5 to 1,000 in 3 years, there's something cool about that. There's something exciting about that, but there's tremendous loss and pain in that. And part of what slow growth affords is often less loss. One of the things that you see with church plants and church planters, so a pastor's going to plant a church, so usually it's him and his family, and then it's a couple other families, and then they usually gather a group of, usually there's actually numbers to all of this, like 20 to 50 people, and that's sort of the kernel. And if the church planter is successful by year 2, they will be over 200. But 60 to 80% of the first 50 people they gather will be gone by the time they hit 200. And what that means is that what happened when they had a group of 30 to 50 is they had a really small, tight-knit group. There was a sense of love. There's a sense of identity. There's a sense of togetherness. And that excitement sort of launched the growth to above 200. But that growth to above 200 destroyed most of what people loved about what they had. And okay, so if your goal is to get above 200, you say that is a cost you are willing to bear. But that remains a cost that actually gets filtered out into the rest of society, because of the 20 or 30 people who left disenchanted from the early group, they take that disenchantment into the rest of their lives. And a good number of the next 200 people that came to the church were the disenchanted people from other plants around them. So what they keep doing is, while there seems to be a net growth, if you're looking through a different frame of analysis, you are magnifying the disenchantment. And we can use different ways, a different metaphor. You are increasing the amount of church pollution that church plants are putting into the environment. And I think part of what has led to these massive deconstructions in society is that church plants have been sort of these things that have been polluting Christianity. And those are, in business terms, you might call them externalities. And so then you have larger structures like government that begins to say, okay, we are going to add regulation to manage the externalities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when actually the bigger problem is not necessarily growth, the big problem is pace. And I think actually a good leader, one of the key things a good leader needs to do is work on pace of growth. You will always have the externalities, but you actually want to figure out, well, where exactly is the sweet spot in terms of time and growth?
Yes, yes, beautifully said. Basically, I really believe that a good leader is also a good orchestrator, and it all has to do with pacing. um, there are many cases, at least in the corporate world, where a startup increased like rapidly, and then it went down because they were not ready to do it. And sometimes it just happens, um, maybe out of pure luck, like somebody made a video, like a review of your company or your restaurant, let's say. No need to go to the technological companies, and there is so much, let's say, people coming in, and that means that you people started coming in because the food was great, but because a lot of them they are coming in now, the quality of the food goes down, and that means that you will get bad reviews. And when you get bad, it's like a negative cycle. And yeah, what you said also about team pool, I also think that what doesn't it's not that it will destroy you, let's say, but it will demotivate you. Like you will reach a point where all the motivation you have gets depleted because the people you invested so much as your team, you don't feel that they have the let's say the stamina or the willingness or the aptitude or the skill set even to support, let's say, the initiative to move to that next, let's say, phase. So yeah, and in those situations, the entrepreneur feels lonely, and it is at those instances that you think, eh, maybe it's not the depth. It's very little, let's say.
Very shallow. It's a mile wide and an inch deep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happens with church planters. And, it's been interesting where there's this whole meme of YouTube, major successful YouTube channels where they just quit. And of course, you've got 1,000 times the number of little YouTube hopefuls out there that are like, they got to millions of subs and they quit. How could they? Because of course they're looking up the ladder. But and I've seen you can find exactly the same dynamic in church planters that they built a church of thousands of people. They got invited to all the right conferences. Their books were selling. Their names were known, and they walk away. And they walk away, or they have an affair. That's sometimes the more common thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and they do it because it's like their hearts are broken because they thought the ladder was God or would fulfill them or something. And they got to the top of the ladder. They're like, and so they fall off the ladder.